Okay, we're continuing with the Best of the West. This is part 29, Best of the West in Art, Movies, Music, and Books by me, Pete Rogers. We're doing the chapter on historians. Again, so anybody who wants to can retrace the steps of this intellectual journey to understand how great the West is. So Charles Murray, he wrote several books, including on human accomplishment. And after surveying, the major genre of the sciences and the arts, the conclusion he came to, like anybody who really studies it, is almost everything comes from the West. Okay, here's his quote, one of his many quotes. He says, in the ancient world, the Greeks had by far the most achievements. And Murray concluded from about 400 BC to 1950, the overwhelming majority of great achievements in art, literature, and science, they came from European white males, about 96% of them, and virtually all of them were Christians until 1850. He points out that St. Thomas Aquinas is really the one who refocused Christianity from the afterlife to the here and now on earth. So Christ, he died about 33 AD. Then there was the covert Catholic Church of the early Roman Empire days, and then St. Peter was crucified upside down in around 64 AD, and St. Paul was martyred in about 68 AD. And anyways, then Constantine came along around 312 AD and sort of made Christianity accepted throughout the empire. But then there was Pope Gregory, came later than that. And by that time now, the Catholic Church sort of began to dominate all of Christendom, what we call Europe of those days. But there was a big focus on the afterlife. Thomas Aquinas came around in the 1200s and put a lot more emphasis on the here and now, here on earth, making the most of that. And he's also the unifier of faith and reason. That faith and reason, they go together. When we study the natural world, science, we honor God in so doing. God's a creator. We too can be a creator. And it's a rational universe. We are a rational animal, and we can understand. So anyways, that's a big deal. Aquinas really refocusing. He baptized Aristotle, made Aristotle acceptable to the church more so. Here's the quote: "It's pleasing to God when we study to understand His creations." Okay, and this accelerated Christian interest in science and inventions in science. The Middle Ages really did lots of inventions. We talked about that before. Okay, Charles Murray. Christianity taught that all human beings are invited into a personal relationship with God, and that all individuals are equal in God's sight, regardless of their earthly station. It is a theology that empowered the individual acting as an individual, as no other philosophy or religion had done before. So monotheism is very powerful, more powerful than polytheism. And Christianity really enabled things to take off, and it inspires people to a great degree. Okay, this message was realized more completely in one part of Christendom, the Catholic West, than in the Orthodox East. There are some good things about Orthodox Christianity out east that I like. I think they allow priests to get married. They're more traditional. That's all good. But our art's way better. They kind of stuck with that Byzantine kind of flat art much longer than I don't care for that art too much. The crucial difference was that Roman Catholicism developed a philosophical and artistic humanism typified and to a great degree engendered by Thomas Aquinas. Aquinas lived from 1226 to 1274 AD. Aquinas made the case, eventually adopted by the Church, that human intelligence is a gift from God, and that to apply human intelligence to understanding the world is not an affront to God, but it is pleasing to Him. Aquinas taught that faith and reason are not in opposition, but they're complementary, and that is completely true. And that's why the modern scientific method and all these early scientific great achievements all came out of the Catholic Church. Okay, it's not a coincidence that Copernicus was a Catholic. Okay, it's not a coincidence either that Galileo was a Catholic. It's not a coincidence that 35 craters on the moon are named after Catholic priests. Okay. Again, in his videos, Charles Murray said that all creative geniuses and scientists were workaholics, usually working 80 hours a week or more. He did mention that women were usually too busy taking care of children to have time to work like maniacs on research. Because up until birth control around the 1960s, women would be having an average of 10 kids. That's going to keep her pretty busy. His book, Human Accomplishment, only goes up to 1950. Okay, of course, after 1950, there was more men, women, and other ethnic groups, but it all came out of Christianity. It really all came out of the Catholic Church. Okay, in the view of Charles Murray, he also says that atheism is often called secular humanism and that it is weak. Secular humanism has no moral foundation. Secular humanism cannot stand up to totalitarianism. Secular humanism cannot stand up to slavery. It has no moral foundation, so it's weak, and that's also why it doesn't produce good artists. It doesn't produce artists at all for the most part. It doesn't produce. It doesn't. When you don't have a moral foundation, things tend to drift into lying and corruption. Because why should a doctor or a scientist care about the peasants who have no money? Patients don't really pay for their care most of the time. Most of the time it's paid for their insurance, which is sort of taken out of their check or given to them somehow. So they really can't do much for an individual in the system. Versus, big drug company, big supplement maker, they can give a lot of money to a person. All right. Christianity says man is created in the image of God, therefore he should not be mistreated. Okay, that'll be it for today. Just doing Charles Murray. We'll do these other historians in the future sessions.